Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace. This is your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. Today's guest is someone who understands Mississippi foodways, not just academically, but spiritually. Born and raised in Mississippi, Sade Meeks has built a mission around reconnecting us to the foods that sustained our ancestors and resisting the systems that have tried to sever that connection. Sade, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited.
Same. I'm excited too.
Yes. I'm even more excited because we are recording in Jackson, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And for folks who have been listening to this show forever, know that my family's from Mississippi. And I am starting to build more connections down here. And so I've actually been, people don't know, kind of silently stalking, following your work. And I'm excited to share your voice with the world and the important things that you've been doing down here in the SIP. And I know you've been other places too, doing great work. So not just isolated to Mississippi, but so super excited. So we are always down for a good origin story, to kick us off. And so we want to set the stage. And I'd love for you to begin with your story. So when you think about the journey that shaped you, what's the first chapter that you'd share?
The journey that shaped me was little Sade taking her booster seat and putting it by the stove because I was too short to see the stove. So I wanted to watch my mom cook. So I would literally take the booster seat that I sat in and stand on it and watch my mom cook. And that's how I began to fall in love with cooking. And my mom would slowly kind of give me more freedom to do things in the kitchen. And so I began baking. And on Sundays was a big thing. She would do a huge Sunday dinner. And she would give me the task of doing the desserts. And in my family, we don't just have one meat or one side. We have multiple. So I was making multiple desserts from red velvet cakes, pound cakes. And then that extended to her job. I started cooking for her coworkers. And so I literally just grew this love for food on Sunday mornings. And as I began to learn more about food, I began to nerd out about food. And so my love for food just expounded, and I began to love the science of food. And then that turned into the history of food. So food has always been a part of me. But when I think about the earliest memories, I think about my moment by the stove watching my mom cook.
A lot of folks, could share that same experience. And I feel like it's one that as you become older, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or speaking off term, that this nostalgia kind of sets in place where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember being in the kitchen watching my mom cook or do this or do that. So I love stories like that. I saw a beautiful video on your website, and I believe this was a story around your grandmother and a bowl of grits and just making that connection with food and her speaking up all the things that she had coming up from the garden and really having direct access to the grocery store outside of the house. And would you say that was a kickstart to Grits Inc. or even before that, your you diving into the food space, making the connection between food and science, and then which the garden is science, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely was this origin of grits. It was the seed planted for grits, and I don't think I knew it at the time because when I became a dietitian, I still kind of didn't know my voice. I kind of just had this textbook voice or this voice that I saw other dietitians having, but that didn't feel true to who my identity was. I was in this space of trying to figure that out. And I took a trip to Yazoo City. When I'm in Mississippi, when I was living in Mississippi, like now I go to see my grandmother like almost every other weekend. And so I was just visiting grandma like usual. And she eats grits like almost every morning. And so I just started asking her about her garden, because I remember we tried to grow a garden in my backyard growing up so many times. But my grandmother was like, that's what's her thing. And my mom used to help all her, my aunts and uncles used to help. And so I was just asking her about the things she grew, and she was telling me about her peanuts and her greens and her tomatoes. And it was just a stark contrast to like the narratives I was hearing in grad school. Mind you, I had just graduated grad school. And so it was like a stark contrast, because in grad school I was hearing, when they talked about Southern foods in LA and California, where I was going to grad school, it was always like a negative thing. And then to go back home and talk to my grandmother and hear her talk so positively and just affirm the things she ate, and see her at the time in her 90s being so resilient and so healthy, like I knew there was other pieces of the story that weren't being told in the way that they should. And that was like literally the seed of grits. I didn't know how that would like really morph into an organization or to this storytelling component, but it eventually continued to grow it, and I figured it out in real time. But yeah, that definitely was that kind of like aha moment, like this is the story I need to tell, and how do I tell it?
Tell people what GRIT stands for.
Yeah, so GRIT stands for Growing Resilience in the South. It's my nonprofit whose mission is to increase the wellness of communities through increased awareness of nutrition, food history, and culture. And GRIT started off me just giving like free nutrition advice to low income individuals. And once again, that was me just seeing. That's what a dietitian does. We give nutrition, but for me, I was trying to increase access, so I made it free. But that still wasn't really what GRIT is today. I had to go back to that storytelling, and now GRIT is more of an organization that uses storytelling to advocate and to connect us, to bridge that gap between nutrition and culture. And the main way that we do that is through film. And so we have a documentary that we're working on, a docuseries that we're working on called Food as Resistance, which is really highlighting all those stories similar to my grandmother that go all the way back to the transatlantic slave trade, talking about how food has always been part of our resistance, but how it still is now.
I love how you took grits. I absolutely love this story. Like from you being at the table, having the conversation with your grandmother, and this is the grandmother who's turning 104.
Yes,
y'all. Sade's grandmother is turning 104 like soon. A blessing.
Yes, next month.
And to still be at arm's length to all of those stories, I'm sure it just feels like yesterday. You know, like when we talk about history, people think, you know, and not some other groups of people, you know, think that it happened way long ago, and we're still in these rooms with our elders who are living to still tell these stories. And then over a bowl of grits, which has been central to like the Black, you know, like diet, if you will. And I just love it because my grandmother, I will say this story ain't about me, it's about Sade, but I gotta talk about my grandmother too. Like she would eat grits every single day. But Sade, she told me, she was like, I stopped eating grits because they don't make them like they used to.
No, that's real. I was literally talking to my friend the other day, and he was like, because he eats grits every day too. He was trying to figure out what's the difference. And so I just been on like this grits like experiment. I've been getting different types of grits, different brands, trying to see like what is the difference. But I don't know what it is. But I have dabbled in some Mississippi grown grits. And as opposed to the, Old Faithful Quaker grits that I used to buy. Right. Because something is different, so we don't know.
We do know.
We know.
They don't make the food like they used to. They blend everything else in the food, It's like you can go to other countries and the food tastes fine, and, another story for another day. But I love the conversation at the table with grandma, the grits, your storytelling platform now, your work as a dietitian, like bridging all that together. It's just that is just so much gold right there. And I
Thank
hope
you.
you know that. Like it's just so much gold right there. So, growing up in Mississippi, Sade, how did the food traditions around you shape your understanding of culture, health, and community? Even more specifically, after you studied, after your studies in the dietitian field, and how would you say the city's food culture reflects both resilience and resistance?
After I became a dietitian, I really had a heightened sense of what health is. I think as a dietitian, we focus on health from that physical aspect, but as a dietitian, I also know that our physical, mental, all of it is connected and social. And so I began to see like just how like things like Sunday dinner, how that's part of our health. We don't have to be drinking a green smoothie to be healthy. Like being around family, pouring into each other with stories, like that is fuel for our soul, and that's not just a metaphor. Like that is can literally help reduce inflammation in our body. Laughter, So like I think it kind of really gave me a broader understanding of what food is. It's not just sustenance, and it's part of our overall well-being.
That I just want to like land the plane. Like we could land the plane there and not talk about anything else. And I love that you said that. When I, even just reflect on like all the conversations that I've had like in this space, right? It was definitely like get some seeds, grow your own food, get some land, and I was still learning. But that sitting around the table, like the Sunday dinners, is such a Black staple. And to be able to, like, you said it way more beautifully than how I'm about to paraphrase it. But that is part of like the health ecosystem, And that has been lost for some families. I mean, the other day, and I have a family that's been coming together for decades, and they wanted to start back doing Sunday dinners at Big Mom's house. And I asked my aunt the other day, I was just like, have y'all done Sunday dinners in a while? She said, no, girl, they Black folks, some people don't show up, they ain't bring what they supposed to bring, whatever. It's a whole thing. But it is the being like shoulder to shoulder, neck and neck, face to face with the people in my bloodline that is just so healing and so comforting. And I'm so glad that you said that, because that is important. Yes, it's sustenance. Like it is food itself, but like just the connection itself.
It's been like ingrained. I think the stereotypes have kind of ingrained this idea that Southern food is bad for us. But at the end of the day, like we grew up on like a meat and three. A three is likely going to be some vegetables. So it's not like we have a diet that's not full of variety or color. I think it's just the stereotypes and narratives that are associated with the South. And so like even when I'm working with clients who are trying to like improve their nutritional aspect of their diet, I reiterate like if you are feeling disconnected from foods that are familiar, that are part of your identity, that's not healthy. And so when I approach counseling, I focus on all aspects. I'm not going to tell someone to like remove something that's been part of their home, that's been part of their comfort, because I really do believe all those things have to come together to truly have like a healthy diet. And so like I wouldn't have really had that perspective if I didn't grow up with food being so integrated into my like identity, and
That's
also like my my culture. And I think that that's a reflection of like how Mississippi is so resilient and resistant. I don't know if it's true, but I remember on the movie Soul Food, they said that the Sunday dinner tradition started in Mississippi. In the intro, Ahmad said that. I don't know. That's Ahmad. I love that movie. I know, I love it too, but I don't know if it's true, but hearing it felt true. Like, I don't know. I feel like it probably could have, but it originated from my ancestors regardless, for a reason. They needed it. Like, they needed that, especially during that time where they were facing so much more worse, racism and discrimination and just evil, attacks against us as Black people. So they knew they needed it. It was like this intuitive thing. Like, we know we need to be around each other eating. And I think that's part of our resistance and resilience, the fact that those traditions, even though they aren't as common today, they still exist. I know my family, it still exists within my family. I know we can't be the only one. But also, like, just looking at things like the SNAP crisis that happened recently. We could have been, just sad and not doing anything. But we weren't. And we saw people on the front lines, whether that was people from churches or just people just maybe not even in the food scene, but just had it on their heart to cook soup on Saturdays. We had people showing up for one another. And I think that's the thing about Mississippi. Like, we gonna look out for one another. And a lot of people come here and it's like, it's not a lot to do, but that's okay, because we like find home, we find things to do with each other. It's not like physical things, it's like the people. And not just for fun, we show up for each other in general. So whether it's fun, whether it's part of our resistance, whatever it is, we are going to rely on each other. And I think when our backs are against the wall or we're facing these systematic disadvantages, like, that really shows. And I think that's a reflection of like how we've been so resistant and resilient within our food culture.
Oh my goodness, well said. It has me, and aside from like family getting together, and actually with family getting together, right? We are so content being at a cookout outside in a chair all day.
Yes.
There is something to be said about that, right? It connects back down to our lineage and how we used to come together, but like still maintaining those connections. There could be nothing going on, but if the music is playing, the barbecue is grilling, the fish is frying, we are outside, we are happy.
Yeah.
The sun is shining, and there's a lot to be said about that, and directly connected to all the things that you just said, but like being around people.
Yeah.
Being around people. I remember when I did my family reunion 2 years ago, those folks just wanted to sit. I'm checking in. They were like, no, we're good.
Yeah.
We're absolutely fine. The music is playing. We're good. And that is definitely a layer or a part of our health that I hadn't even considered, really, honestly, until you spoke so eloquently to that. So thank you for reminding the audience, like, it's, yes, family, and whether you have a best friend that you consider your sister, just being around each other. Like, we'd be content outside, sun shining, melanin just doing its thing. So that's, I thank you for uplifting that. You, for listeners who do not know Jackson specifically, how would you describe, and you did speak to a little bit of the essence of how folks do show up for one another, and I think that's across the board, in Mississippi communities, but specifically Jackson, which is the capital here. Let's remind y'all, the capital. How would you describe the food landscape and the food communities that exist here?
I think the food landscape is very dynamic. Mind you, Jackson is the blackest city in the United States. And an outsider may think that that's going to mean that our food is a monolith. Like, everybody already think Black food is a monolith. But that's not what I see here in the food space. I see shelves not just preserving recipes and amplifying them, but like reimagining them in ways that just make us excited about food. Excited to come together too. When food brings us together, and I think being able to bridge both those new and old ways excites us, excites the community. So I think that's a dynamic part of it. We have chefs who stick to the fried chicken and the mac and cheese, which I love. But then we have chefs that are preserving those legacies of like Fannie Lou Hamer, or Edna Lewis, who really honed in on that farm to table. And then we have chefs who are bridging like their French training with their Southern roots. So it's just really dynamic to see and witness. And I love the intentionality behind it. And I respect it so much too. Just knowing the history. I respect intentionality when it comes to food. And I think a lot of chefs and a lot of people in the food spaces here are intentional about it because food means a lot to them. It's not just like their career, like it's part of their identity. And I think that's something that I noticed being back in Jackson, Mississippi.
I'm so glad when you opened up with your statement of, it's everyone thinks that black food is like a monolith. All the South ain't the same, y'all.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And like we respect it all, but it is I didn't grow up eating fried chicken in my family. There may be some other families here in Mississippi, just wasn't a thing. I don't know that I actually even remember a family member frying chicken in my family, right? Fish, absolutely. Hog mogs, absolutely. Chitlins, absolutely, right? So, like, it just gets me. And I've been in some spaces that once you start talking about where your family is from, it's just like, oh, I love me some, like, barbecue chicken. I'm like, they don't cook it. So.
Yeah, it differs so regionally. And it's like, even, like, our neighbors eat differently. Like Memphis, New Orleans, like, all, like, and even the Carolinas, we can go all the way down there. So it just... Yeah, that's another. I don't know if you want to go. Yeah, that's a whole book to talk about. But yeah, that's kind of too like what inspired my first documentary was I was on like this mission to tell the whole food story and kind of dismantle these stereotypes and these negative narratives too about like what our foods are. Because I didn't learn this stuff in school. I just had to start exploring on my own, and I was like, dang, like, why have this many? I feel like stuff had been kept. Oh, sorry. I feel like things have been kept from me. In regards
bamboozled, hoodwinked,
right? And for me, food was a way of understanding like where I come from because a lot of Black folks like we don't know like where our folks are from, if you're thinking about West Africa, like where we came from. And so food for me was like this way to kind of trace, even like through taste. Like at least I know like what we ate, like these foods connect me to my ancestors in some way. And so that's kind of like what it was for me. It was kind of helped me build my identity in a way and understand in a deeper way of like where I come from.
Spot on, absolutely spot on. We were joking just a moment ago about like whole nother show to dive into like just the different regional like foods and especially like in the South, in the Carolinas, Gullah Geechee and all that. And the person who comes to mind, which I think we share the same sentiments about being like one of our favorites, is Michael Twitty, who is a phenomenal culinary historian for those who do not know, but I'm sure y'all do know. And I believe I was watching a video. Actually, you were interviewing the amazing, I think, Brea, who another just great author, writer, just phenomenal. And I believe you had mentioned that, after you had been able to like read, really deep dive into Michael's, all the things that he has produced, that it had like it made you think a little bit differently around food, especially I think this was like post your studies as a dietitian, and just like really interested in like how your perspective might have changed. And you maybe spoke to that a bit about like some stuff being like not shared with you or feeling like I know I felt hoodwinked.
Yes. Yes. So it was like actually I was studying for my RD exam, so I was finished. Like, I had graduated, but I still needed to become a dietitian. And so I think I was just kind of taking a break from my studies and listening to food podcasts. And I stumbled across one where I don't even know. I want to say maybe it was a gastro podcast. I don't know. But he was on, it wasn't his podcast. He was a guest, and he was just speaking about food and, where our foods come from. And he's from DC, I believe. He's not even from the South, but he spoke so highly of the South. And I'm not even gonna lie, like, part of me moving to LA to go to grad school, I did have family there, but I kind of wanted to get out of the South. And it wasn't, oh, I just want to explore. It was like, I need to get out of here. That's how I felt. And it was in those feelings were, I think, internalized narratives that I just took in. Like, I always heard bad things about, like, where I was from, and I didn't feel like I could thrive here. And so I think part of my reason to going to LA was kind of to get away, and I didn't imagine coming back. At that point, I was looking for jobs in California. But then, like, I was listening to him, and he was talking about all this history, how our ancestors, like, preserved so much, and it was like stories I did not hear and know about. And I was like, oh my God, like, Mississippi is actually where I need to be. And in the middle of that podcast, I remember it like yesterday. I was at a coffee shop. I just went in the bathroom and cried because I felt like I had to, like, surrender this idea that I was gonna live by the beach in Long Beach and come back. So it was like I knew I had to release that because I knew my purpose was here in Mississippi. And I think I cried because I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know. I really didn't. I just knew I was supposed to be here. And so, yeah, that was really a life-changing moment, honestly, because I literally could have been still applying for jobs in LA. But no, I came back. I came back to the South, and it was one of the best decisions I made at that time. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. Listen, it's fair to be like, you need to get away and, you want to start a new life somewhere. Like, listen, but I'm glad that you're back because it also takes creatives and storytellers like you to come back and, like, rebuild, reshape the narrative, and it's because if everyone starts to leave, it's just like, what is left? Like, we need, so I think it's an amazing thing when natives come back, to where they grew up at, because we need y'all.
Yeah.
We do. We really do. So, and thank you for sharing that vulnerable moment with me. So I felt all of that. When you actually you have already mentioned, like, some of the amazing, documentation work that you've been doing, with Grits, and again, love the name Grits. Grits. Are there any particular stories that you feel like kind of just, like, tugged at your heart, that emerged, that you feel like it's that one? And I know there's, like, tons of amazing people. I know this is hard. This is hard. But I feel like you always walk away remembering, like, that one story, like, oh my gosh, like, this is a model, or this is just, like, love. This is just something that could really be replicated across the city, in terms of, like, what this person is doing. Is there one that just kind of comes to mind?
I want to say I don't know if this falls in that category, but it is a story that it always kind of connects the dots for me. I think I was interviewing a colleague, or we were maybe doing a webinar together for Grits. And we were talking about food as resistance and what that looks like. And she's a Black dietitian. There's only 3% of us, so almost all of us know each other. But she was talking about her time growing up in Memphis. And she had a different kind of story for me. Like, I didn't grow up on a farm, but she grew up on a farm. And she was just saying how she never had this idea that what she ate was, like, bad for her. Or, like, she never heard these negative stereotypes. But as I stated, like, I had to kind of unlearn by, like, just kind of listening to my grandmother. Because, like, I was kind of conflicted. Like, I was hearing, I didn't know. Like, it just felt like this disconnect. But she was like, I never had that disconnection. And for me, like, it was because she grew up with her hands in the soil. And that was, like, that's when I realized, like, it's literally that connection piece. Like, it's so much power in being connected to food. And that was like a prime example. Like, we both grew up in the South. We both, had similar educational training, but with her hands in the soil, she didn't have to unlearn some things about food. And so that's why, like, part is my mission to connect us with food. Even if your hand isn't in the soil, you can connect with food in so many other ways. And so I really want people to connect with stories, connect with food, not just through like your taste buds, but like just connect with some family recipes, some with your grandmother over grits some way, because that it really does change how you view food, how you heal around food, build a healthy relationship with food. People use that term a lot in the eating disorder space, but I think healthy relationship with food is for everybody. And I think we don't realize sometimes we have this unhealthy relationship with our cultural foods. And it's because of these narratives and these stereotypes that have kind of just perpetuated mainstream media.
Thank you for sharing that. I felt like soil, you had mentioned soil just a few moments ago. And speaking of soil, there's just some other amazing partnerships that you've built. And there is an amazing like platform and community, Sip Culture. And they have done some really great, partner with some folks like down in Clarksville, and I believe you've had some parts to play in that. But I do want to bring that up because like when we're speaking about food communities, like there's so much greatness here in Jackson and like surrounding Jackson. So just like speaking to some other like amazing things that you've had your hands on in like the storytelling space.
Yeah, and I think you were referencing Sip Talk. So Sip Talk, but Sip Culture is also a great organization.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So shout out to both of them. But so Soil was a great art exhibition, but it extends more than just an exhibition. But it's a storytelling project that was spearheaded with Delta Roots Project, and Justin Hardiman is the artist that shot that exhibit. But his goal was to like immortalize the people in the Delta and really celebrate and highlight the work that they do with food, because to them it's just like normal everyday thing. And so it was just kind of amplifying what they do on the daily. And Sip Talk helped really produce the exhibit and also the rollout of that. But they were also part of bringing centers. They helped a lot when centers came to Clarksville too. And I got to write a reflection piece, just really about my experience being there. I wasn't working or doing anything. I was just there. Sometimes being in a space is enough. And
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And so I was able to kind of reflect on that moment. But I love just I think at the end of the day, I am a storyteller, and I think in any capacity where I can do that, whether it's through film, grits, or writing, which is one of my first loves too. I love it. So a lot of times with Sip Talk, I collaborate them with my writing and my reflection, because they do a lot of work too, not just with food, but just artists in general, highlighting Black Mississippians. And so sometimes I'm able to collaborate with them through some reflection pieces. They also helped produce what Jazz, the founder of Sip Talk, has helped produce some of Grit's documentary. So it's just an art community, honestly, in Jackson, and we always find ways to support each other and kind of collaborate, which is really beautiful. Like, I didn't begin to identify as an artist until I moved back to Jackson.
Really?
Yeah, and I think I'll use this. I love using metaphors about growth and planting and gardening, but I do think they kind of nourished that in me. Like, if I was in LA, I don't think I would have had people around me to nourish that part of who I was or who I am. But being back in Jackson, like, a lot of artists here nourish that part of me, because I just kind of saw myself as this dietitian, this scientist. But now I own it. Like, I'm an artist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, and all those things can coexist. You know, you don't have to like be in this one box. So long story short, like, the artist community here has been very supportive and nourishing in the work that I do outside of grits and within grits.
That's wonderful. Yeah. It's always so beautiful and affirming when you have like a surrounding community that looks at you and like sees things that you don't even see. You know, like you said, you just always saw yourself as a dietitian, and they're like, no, Shai, you are an artist, a creative, you're a griot, you're like all those things, and it's beautiful. And just speaking again, just reflecting back, just being in community with people, and like, but then also on top of that, having someone like affirm what you are too, like, oh my gosh, like incredible. When you think about the next generation of Black storytellers, what do you hope they inherit from the work that you're doing?
Um, I honestly just hope it inspires them to be okay with doing something you don't see. And that takes takes some courage. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, a lot of people look and see the work that I've done, and they thank you for affirming it and thank you for celebrating it. But it's been it's been hard, and I'm grateful that I have people affirming me, because sometimes I would question, like, does this even make sense? Like, will people get it? Because once again, I didn't see dietitians doing the things that I've done in this space, and I just felt like I had to stay in this box, but I didn't. So I think creatives and storytellers should be okay with not seeing, what they're doing being done. And that's what our imagination is for. So, like, to embrace our imagination. And I recently got to sit in on Angela Davis speak, and she spoke a lot about imagination at Tougaloo, for voices the Voices for Justice. I think that's the name of it. But she spoke a lot about imagination, and really just and I wrote a reflection piece that Sip Talk's gonna also post about that. But it really just gave me a deeper understanding of like how powerful our imagination is. Like, we don't just imagine to visualize or to actualize something that happened. Like, we imagine because that's what gets us moving. Like, if our imagination didn't exist, we wouldn't do anything. And like, the Black Panthers had to imagine something. Angela Davis had to imagine something. Fannie Lou Hamer had to imagine something. And even if they didn't achieve what they imagined, they probably achieved something greater. And so I think that's what I want future storytellers and creatives to do, is to imagine and be okay, even if that thing doesn't happen. Know that there's still some power in your ability to imagine. So that's been my like most recent lesson that I just been leaning in more this year.
There is nothing like the Black imagination,
Yes.
the things that we can imagine, and the art that comes from that.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it is. I am always blown away with what comes from Black artists, that has come from the imagination of what they
Yeah.
thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, this started off as maybe a tiny thought, and you were in a corner of the world that no one else could see. And then if we get the chance to see that, it is just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It just gives me chills, like thinking about it. Like it
Same.
really does. It does. We're gonna wrap up here, but if you could place one physical object from your journey, it could be a seed, a ledger, a tool, anything, into a 100-year vault for the next generation of stewards, what would it be and why?
I saw that question and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. But it just came to me in this moment. So right now it would be this cookbook that my mom has. And I forget the name of the book, but it got stories in it, not just the written letters, but it's like the red food coloring on the pages or the chocolate on some
I
pages.
love it.
And that's what I really want to preserve. Not that, well, I want to preserve the recipes too,
Yeah.
but it's like I know which recipes I spent a lot of time on. I could kind of probably remember when this thing got on that page, and it does something to like little Sade, but it just gave me chills. But it also like reminds me like that story is why I'm here today. And I want people to be able to like touch that page and imagine like who was cooking that recipe, or like what Sunday dinner, what stories were being told at Sunday dinner that weekend. So that's what I was feeling about.
You didn't know?
I know that just came.
Piece of gold right here.
I was like, God, whatever I need to say for that quick, I can. It literally just came.
Right. No, I love that. And, you know, I'm bridging more so in the mindset of an archivist, not to, you know, take away from like the folks who've like actually studied like this, you know, not here to do that. But as storytellers, I feel like we are definitely unintentionally creating this vault of something. I even think about, you know, I used to like literally print out all my questions. Like I stopped doing that because I don't want to waste paper. But I think about, and I still have that, and I'm like, if I were to leave something behind to tell the story of Melissa in this podcast, this platform, you have all those artifacts. And so I am, as I bridge or move closer to almost 200 episodes, Lord's will, which I'm excited about, I am asking that question because all of us are storytellers and all of us are like archiving something, and all of us have, you know, these artifacts that have come out of what we're doing, and it's so important to preserve that. So I'm just curious. I'm just super curious. So, hi. So for my final question, how can we support Grits? How can the audience support Grits?
Well, to support Grits, you can follow us on our social media platforms, which is Grits _Inc. on Instagram. And stay tuned for our docu series that's coming up. We're going to be hosting screenings. We are a nonprofit, so at all our events, we're always fundraising, so we are able to do more things within the community. So one, just follow us first. Two, you have the financial ability to support financially. Right now, we've been like just working from a labor of love when it comes to like finishing some of our projects, like the docu-series. But once again, since we are almost complete with that, we want to begin to host more screenings, and not just screenings, but opportunities for us to gather and have these conversations about food in these spaces together. And that takes, you know, time and financial support, so that you can support us that way. And also just you can support by practicing food as resistance on your own too. I think a lot of people think that activism looks one way, but if you can dismantle a stereotype, or if you can tell a story, or you can help someone connect with food, like that is a form of resistance. And so I think just doing something is part of supporting our mission. If you can be a part of resisting some of these negative narratives, or helping people connect with food. So that's something you can do personally, but it will also just still support Grit's greater mission. So yeah.
Y'all heard that from Sade. Support. We have to support our creatives and storytellers. Sade, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure. And I'm excited to hopefully build with you, work with you in this amazing community here in Jackson. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.